Hi, so today we are going to be talking about solving proportional relationships. Our essential question today is how do I solve proportional relationships? So be watchful as I go through this video. Um, There'll be at the end a summary that you have to create and you have to decide what are the steps for solving proportional relationships. So make sure you pay attention and watch the whole video. All right, so we have to first define what proportional relationships are before we can get started. So, a proportional relationship which I also sometimes simplify to PR just to be a little bit quicker. But the first time I will write it out. Proportional relationships. These are relationships between two variables where their ratios are equivalent. So relationships between two variables where their ratios are equivalent. Another word for equivalent is like they're the same, basically. So there are steps into solving proportional relationships, and they're good to remember. So the steps are simple. Step one, we list out the steps. Step one is to cross multiply. So that's the very first step. And I'll show you what cross multiply looks like. It's a little different than multiplying across like we did for multiplying fractions. So it's a little different, but this is to cross multiply. Then step two is to divide. Step two is to divide. And this is all to tell you how to solve proportional relationship. So these two steps is how to solve the proportional relationship. So let's say, for instance, I'm going to give you an example problem. And let's say we have 5 over 6 is equal to x over 12. So be aware that proportions are set up where one fraction is equal to another fraction because they're equivalent. They're supposed to be the same. So that's why they're equal to one another. So we need to figure out what would x be if these are equivalent. So the first step tells us to cross multiply. So when I say cross, that means you are you're gonna make a cross, kind of like in the center where they cross each other. So you're multiplying the numerator with the denominator, then the denominator with the numerator on the other side. So if we were to multiply, we do 6 times x, which anytime you have 6 times x, that's just 6x. So anytime you're multiplying 6 times x, we don't know what x is. It's unknown. So we just label it 6x because we don't know what that number is. So we just put them next to each other. So 6 times x equals, and then we have 5 times 12, which we know is 60. So then we did the cross multiplication. We got 6x equals 60. And then the step 2 tells us to divide. So we're going to take both sides and we're dividing by the number next to x. So divide by number next to x. And then if we're dividing by the number next to x, the number next to x is 6. On both sides, we're going to divide by 6. 6 divided by 6, this just makes a giant 1. So then you're left with just x equals 60 divided by 6 is 10. And that's how you solve a proportion when it's as basic as just a fraction equal to another fraction. Sometimes it's going to get a little bit more complicated, but that only happens when you have word problems. So word problems, we'll change it up just a little bit. So same thing with cross multiplication and dividing, but we first have to set up the proportion. So when you have a word problem, you don't have this just to cross multiply and divide. So we have to set it up first. So step 1, so word problem steps. The first step is to find the 2 units in the problem. So you're going to find the 2 units in the problem, because there's something there when they have 2 variables. So there's going to be 2 things in the problem we need to find out what those 2 units are. And then step 2, so the second step is to match the units in the numerator and denominator. So whatever unit you put in the numerator on the left side, that's what you're going to put the same thing on the right side. Whatever you put on the denominator on the left side, you put the same thing on the denominator on the right side. So let's say our word problem is Miss Murchison runs 2 miles in 20 minutes. How many miles would she run in 30? So it's saying Miss Murchison runs 2 miles in 20 minutes. How many miles would she run in 30 minutes? So now we have to set this up. What does this look like? So first we need to find the 2 units. The 2 units in this problem looks like it's miles and minutes. So these are my 2 units. And then, so we need to, those are our 2 units that we are comparing. The same thing here, miles, minutes for the second part of the sentence. Now we have to set it up. So we found our 2 units, and need to set up our proportion. So we have a left side is equal to a right side. So now we need to figure out what goes where. So like I said before, you need to match the units in the numerator and denominator. So we need to pick, do we want the miles in the numerator or the denominator in the numerator? I'm just going to pick one. I'm going to say I want miles in the numerator. And if I pick miles in the numerator on the left side, I have to pick miles to be in the numerator on the right side. And then the only other unit is minutes. So then I want minutes in the denominator on both sides. So then now I actually have to just put in the value. So for the first part, which is the left side, it was 2 miles in 20 minutes. So I'm going to match the 2 miles I'm going to match the 2 with the miles. I'm going to match the 20 with the minutes. So now we need a right side, which the right side is the second part of the sentence, which is how many miles would she run in 30 minutes? So I know this, the 30 goes with the minutes. And then it says how many miles? We don't know how many miles, so we can always label that as X, our variable, because we don't know how many miles. So then now we're going to cross multiply and then divide, just like we did above. It doesn't matter that now we have units, it's the same process. So we got to cross multiply. So then we have 20 times X, which is 20X, is equal to 2 times 30 equals 60. And then step 2 says divide by the number next to X. 20 is next to X. So then divide by 20 on both sides. This made a giant 1. So then you're just left with X equals 30. And this is 30. We got to find our units. This was 30 or 3, sorry, I didn't mean to say 30, 3, 3 miles. Because that was the unit that was missing, and that's what we found, 3 miles. Sorry about that mix-up. All right, our next word problem goes as follows. Let's say there are 10 students for every 4 teachers. If there are 20 students, how many teachers are there? So there are 10 students for every 4 teachers. There are 20 students. How many teachers are there? So like I said, we got to first set up our, first figure out what are our 2 units. We look at our problem. We got students and teachers. So then I'm going to label students and teachers here as well. So now we have to do our setup. So we already know that it's going to be a fraction equal to another fraction. Now we just have to pick where we want our units. I'm going to put students in our numerator and teachers in our denominator just because students came first. It doesn't matter where you put what as long as you match it. So students here, so then students will go here. If teachers are in the denominator on the left side, then teachers need to be in the denominator on the right side. So then now I have to throw in my values. I had 10 students, so I'm gonna put my 10 students. And then I have 4 teachers, so 4 teachers. That's my first sentence taken care of. Now it says if there are 20 students, so now I know there's 20 students, how many teachers? So I don't know how many teachers. So that's X. Now we're gonna cross multiply and divide. So cross multiply. So 10 times X is 10X. 4 times 20 is 80. Remember, step 2, divide by the number next X. So I'm going to divide by 10 on both sides. And then I get 10X divided by 10, which equals giant 1, so just X equals 80 divided by 10 is 8. And I can't leave without my units, so 8, what were we looking for? 8 teachers. So then for your summary, I want you to try to define these steps. So the question, our essential question was, how do I solve proportional relationships? That's what you need to write for your summary. And then that's what you're going to put on that document on Google Classroom. Thank you so much.